Yes, buckle your seatbelt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rambling Canucks Roundtable Reviews. Today's episode will be Star Trek, the original series, The Cage, Part 2. Last week, we left our Pike and crew. I'll get this figured out sooner or later. Pike and crew, as the crew is about to blast through the doors to try to save Pike. So I'm going to go around, and we kind of ended with this last time, so we're going to start with it this time. What was the number value given to the second part of this episode? Trek?
I would have to say overall 6.
Okay, so you're still sticking with your 6.
That's
and
right.
Vance.
Well, I'm gonna wait to give my number till after we talk about it because I think I can't really process everything until after we talk about it because I think if we give it before and then talk about it, it's kind of
tipping our hats.
Yeah, I think I'll hold it till after because
all right.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll wait till after. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I am pretty close to where I was before. But just a little bit of a teaser. All right. So going on. So the second part of this episode where we split it up starts with them firing this massive cannon at this at the door, and it not doing a damn thing, from what they could tell. Later on, we find otherwise. But for now, the door stays intact. And then after that, we're kind of going to skim through because there wasn't a lot of moments where we really have to talk majorly. So the illusions go, and then they try to beam down again. And, well, Captain's found out something. So from the first little bit, what are your initial thoughts of part 2, Captain Trey?
Well, as they were trying to blast their way in, I find it interesting that number 1 was down there and leading the team. And of course, the big old machine is supposed to be, I don't know, channeling the ship's power through, where in the original series they'd just fire from orbit, and just having this phaser beam going at this mountain, and seemingly nothing happening until they go into overload and have to shut down. But then as far as the rest of the illusions, interesting, but not exactly exciting.
And Vance,
I loved it. I think everything about the first scene that we come back to. You have number 1 first off on the planet, and she's right next to the star of the show, which is of course the Doctor. They got those really awesome goggles, which I need to get me a set of those. Those are epic. And then they're next to that firing array thing, which that is Buck Rogers style, like ray gun stuff. Like whoever designed that, awesome. Like that is the coolest thing ever. So like that whole scene right there, like yes, give me more of that. Like we need to see some of that stuff in DS9. Put some of that in Star Trek Picard. Like you show me some of that stuff, I'm hooked. I'm in for every season. So that whole scene, I was won over. So, and the whole time I'm watching the Doctor in that scene, which of course he belongs there, because why wouldn't you have the Doctor right next to, that big engineering array shooting a hole through a door? Like, why wouldn't he be there? So I loved it. Everything about that scene won, just win-win. So loved it.
All right. Yeah, for me, I thought it was interesting that, for somebody who came into Star Trek during TNG, I always found it interesting how they have to bring the gun down to the planet to shoot it. Whereas, normally they just shoot from, as this Captain Trek says, from orbit. They just fire at it. So I found that part interesting. I also found it interesting how number one is down on the planet, and now so Spock's now in charge, and then later on they go, and these two scenes are meshing in my head. So if I get them in the wrong order, shoot me. But I think they do the dancing scene first, right? Then then the crew beams down. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I got it. Okay, so the scene that would not pass anywhere in the world today. Yeah, this would like break Twitter. If they did this scene, would break Twitter. So the Talosians are continuing to try to tempt Pike, and so what they do is they have the woman. She's now green. Yay! I forget the race, but I know it's there, and I'm going to get shot by Star Trekkies for not remembering. But anyway, I'm sure one of my panelists will help me. And they're trying to go, look how easy your life could be. No worries, no problems, nothing. And as he's sitting there, he's getting more and more mad because he's found out now that they can't read through anger. They can't read through primitive emotions. So he's trying so hard to be angry at this point, and they keep it going, and then there's really boring dialogue between two people on either side of them that wouldn't pass in 2020 if you tried. And yeah, so what were your thoughts, Kat?
I think you're talking about the Orion slave girl.
There you go.
Yes, it was definitely the fact that she was referred to as that, and that they are very submissive. Yeah, that definitely would not have gone over today. As far as the scene, it was yes, I said it was fairly good. I'd like to know what Vance has to say.
Well, I think it could have if it was like on HBO, like Game of Thrones. It would have gone over fine there, because you see suggestive stuff there, and it's fine. To me, I felt out of all the scenes that are shown to be kind of taunting for Pike, or kind of suggestive for Pike to kind of get him over to their side. I thought the one that was best for me was the picnic one, because that to me was where he's like, this is where I grew up. This is where, it was the family life that he was really, really wanting, to, like we were talking about last week with, his desire to leave, what would eventually be Starfleet or Space Force or whatever, they designated it in the Cage era, to just kind of get away and take a break and get away from everything. So I felt like that was more, appealing to Pike instead of this Orion slave girl. I felt like that was their last ditch effort to be like, okay, we couldn't appeal to the family life. Let's appeal to the lust and the desire. If love doesn't appeal to you, how about this? Because again, they're trying, and they don't fully understand humans. So I understand why they were trying that approach. But I feel like at the time it would have been like what we would equivalent to like HBO or Showtime or something like that. But it's for today's standards, it's not that bad. At the time, though, it was definitely a little saucy.
Yes, for the time, yes. Now, I mean, they're almost worse than Picard, and definitely in other shows, but it struck you, or just wow, some of this just wouldn't fly.
Well, the idea of Orion slave women, and I like how in Enterprise they kind of retconned it by just the name of no, it's the women that are the the slave owners. They own the men. Like, I love how it's a play on words and how we just misunderstood it for like what 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And
Oops. Minor miscalculation.
Right. And but so I loved how all of that was just their desperate attempt of a dying race. So to me, I really enjoyed the second part for what it was trying to do. How it showed in the first half of it, it was this all-powerful race of telepaths, and they're not so tough, and Pike really did outsmart them through ingenuity. To me, I felt in the first half of it, there were some flaws that I really didn't care for, but I felt it was very strong. And this one, I felt like the Orion slave part. It was kind of annoying with the two guys on the side, like, oh hey Pike, kind of ribbing him a little bit. I felt like that was just very off-putting. And even in character for those characters, like, it was very off-putting. So to me, that wasn't even appealing. Even in universe, it was very off-putting. But again, like, it was their last-ditch effort because they don't understand humans, and I think that was kind of the point of what the writers were trying to go for. They don't understand humans.
Yeah. So one thing. As things progress, they try to beam down because they find something that they think that they can attack to be able to free everybody. So when they go to beam down, only the yeoman and number one beam down. Everybody else is left on the ship. And the interesting part first that I kind of want to get to is not so much what happens when they beam down, but more Spock's immediate decision once, okay, this is screwed up again. We're getting out of here, folks. Das Vidania. What were your thoughts when that line came out of Spock, where it's like, okay, our captain's down, our number one's down, our yeoman's down. We've tried everything. This ain't working. We're getting out of here. We're picking up and we're gone. What did you think, Cap?
Well, the fact that that Spock was doing that, to me, was very military. It's like, we have lost the captain, we've lost the first officer, we've lost somebody else. We need to get out of here and save what we can, and worry about the rest later. And he was going really on instinct, it seemed, more than what we would do as emotion. It was just, we got to save the crew, we got to save the ship first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vance, what was your thoughts on that?
No, without sounding trite, it was the logical choice. It was the only thing to do, and nothing else could be done. You're faced with the only thing to do. What else can you do? Everything else, I mean, you have all these, you have this telepathic race that's done this thing too. You can't break through the wall. You have this terrible doctor, run, no, in all seriousness, I mean, it is the logical thing to do. You're the highest ranking officer, you've lost your basic chain of command. It's like, hey, we need to get out of here and kind of regroup ourselves. Everything you've done up to this point has failed. Regroup. Especially the fact that you're so off course, regroup. And then, obviously he's made the right choice, because as soon as you try, then your systems go offline. It's like, oh shoot. And I like the look on his face when the lights slowly dim. Yeah.
Damn
so
it.
yeah, exactly.
All right, so now let's go to what happens on the surface. So the yeoman and number one beam down, and basically now it's like, okay, well maybe it's just the woman you don't like. So now we've given you choices. What were your thoughts on that aspect of it? Now they're getting desperate. Now it's like, okay, well, out of these three, there's got to be something. You got to like one of them, and then of course they embarrass them both by telling Pike that both of them like him. Right? So that'll be interesting near the water cooler. So Captain Trek, what was your thoughts on that?
Yes, I like the fact that they, number one is very, very quiet, very logical, very reserved, and they kind of exposed her secret of being interested in him. With the other woman, it was not so secret. I mean, she was not actually a great character, and as it was written, you could kind of see that she was interested in him. So, the fact that they wanted to bring down another quote unquote Eve, as they called, to have two specimens, it doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah. Okay. And Vance, what was your thought on this plot twist?
Well, first off, I had the biggest crush on Colt as a kid, so it would have been over at that point. I'd have been like, all right, there we go. We'll go with her. I'm done. So like it's one of those things where it's like, again, they don't understand humanity. So it was great to see them again just act in this highly advanced race that's so advanced they don't understand the simple things. Again, act out of desperation. So I like that. And again, to sit there and see this story of these people just not grasp the simplest things. I liked it to see the nervousness of Colt and to see the awkwardness with her with Pike, and even the professionalism of number one around Pike, even knowing that, oh, okay, she does kind of have a thing for him. It's like, to me, it's that's the way Kirk should have been. And I maybe this is jumping ahead for those of people who aren't or who are going to watch us do these reviews. But like, they always made Kirk out to be like this suave ladies man, and I never really liked that. To me, I liked this where it was a little bit more subtle,
Yeah.
And I like that here, because it's like, you don't have to be the sexiest man alive to be attractive to someone, and I like that here, because it's like, you can be attracted to somebody who's above you, no pun intended, and I like that, and they did that perfectly here. And the fact that it kind of takes him by surprise, and it's something where she didn't want him to know that, I like that a lot. And the joke at the end where Colt asks who would have been your Eve, and number one kind of barks at her like, get off the bridge, like, don't ask that. To me, that worked just like that was perfect. To me, that really, that was just icing on the cake. That, to me, that worked.
Yeah. Although the doctor's line that followed that, I didn't quite.
Well, again, jealousy of the MVP.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're able. Pike's able to grab one when they're, I guess, going to be bringing them food or nourishment, and traps him, kind of strong arms him, chokes him. Gains control. And they go up to the planet, and the Thelosian kind of tries to act like, well, this is what we wanted. We wanted you up here, and this is where we always meant for you to be, and blah, 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 blah. And then I find it very interesting who they chose to set the phaser to overload. That was number one. it wasn't Pike who's been fighting them the whole time. It was number one. And I kind of like that. And just that dynamic. What about you, Cap?
Well, I find it, in the second part, the Thelosians really were kind of assholes, and they kind of deserve to be treated the way they were, and how Pike tricked him to get him in there and was willing to twist his neck off to end the illusion, to be able to escape. And when they finally get to the surface, number one, doing the phaser overload that you talked about, it's like we are willing to sacrifice everything for our ability to be free, to remain in control of our own life, rather than being controlled by you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is 100% a human trait. Vance, what did you think?
I think this thing works on so many levels because it really does show like so many people thinking on so many different levels, and I finally see why like CBS was like, hey, this is too cerebral. Because they're in the first half of it, like it was more of a kind of to me, I kind of saw the gunslingerish, cowboy-esque vibe that would eventually be like, what Star Trek would be. But in this one, it was more of a thinking game, and I liked it because it was very much like chess. Or even checkers, where you're just thinking. But there wasn't a lot of action. It was a lot of people just thinking, and working toward getting, out of this cage. So I do like the fact that everybody was thinking and working. To me, this felt a lot like, the second part of it was very much like a next gen episode, like with the away missions and everything. And I liked it. And to me, I think that's probably why I do like this episode a lot, is because it felt a lot like a next gen episode instead of like a classic original series episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So basically, the Telosians, after downloading the computer from the Enterprise, they've determined that the humans are not who they want to keep around. They're a little too hard to control. And this is going to end badly for them. So they've decided, yeah, you don't fit the bill anymore. We're just going to let you go away. So please go away. And you've condemned us to death. Thanks for that, by the way. And just get out of here. It's basically the end motto of this. And so, of course, they slowly beam back to the ship. And then the episode fades to black after a little bit of repertoire on the bridge. So I'm going to let everybody give their kind of final thoughts and grade, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Captain Trek.
Well, I thought that, as I said, I would grade this a 6. I liked certain elements of it. And as far as, a pilot episode, it wasn't bad. But, I think part of it is, again, looking back at what this was, and then what we initially got, because we didn't get to see this before. We didn't get to see this until years later. So it was it was definitely different. And I am curious what the new Star Trek series is going to be like, and if they're going to draw any inspiration from what this series could have been in this new series.
I can tell you this right now: the Enterprise is going to be printing out paper.
I hope it's not. That would be the one thing that would be
I can tell you that right now.
I dig it.
All right, and Vance, your final thoughts on this episode and grade?
Well, I love the thoughts on how humanity's destruction has doomed a race, how it's selfishness, um, for it's I love the ending and the realization that how humanity is and its very nature can doom an entire civilization. And I love the look on the Telosian's face when he comes to that realization, because I think there's a lot of truth to that for us as a species, because I think there's a lot of destructiveness in us, and I think I think some of us haven't come to that realization yet. A lot of what we've been dealing with recently, comes to mind, without being political. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. It was true 50 years ago. It's true today. Um, on a side note, I love the Telosian, how their heads kind of bubble. That creeped me out as a kid. It still kind of is off putting. Um, I love how they were able to take the illusion of Pike for Vina. Um, I like the fact that when Pike goes up to the ship, he's like, we're leaving her behind, and I agree with her reasons why. And then when he gets back to the bridge, he comes to that full circle of I'm where I belong, and it's not what any of those things that I thought I needed at the beginning. And it's a maturity of where a lot of characters who go through entire seasons don't get through. No offense, I feel like Picard didn't come to that full character journey that Pike did in this one episode. And that's not a knock to anyone that liked Picard. I like there were elements of Picard that I really enjoyed. I just don't feel like he came to the full character arc that Pike did in this one episode. Again, Pike is one of my favorite characters. He's one of my favorite captains. He's right underneath Sisko. Anson Mount continued that tradition with what he did in Discovery, and I cannot wait for Strange New Worlds. So the second half, I would have to say that I also give this an 8, right behind last week's, giving it an 8. It just because it wasn't a perfect episode. The Doctor didn't annoy me like he did last week, but I do love the retro sci-fi elements, like the that big laser gun thing that they shot at. I love the fact that when they come up through the elevator, you see half the rock has been blown off, which continued the element of like when Pike had the gun at the Telosian, and he's like, I bet you if I press this gun, it's going to blow your head off. Like, like this gun is loaded, and I bet you I blew a hole through that glass and I just can't see it. I like the fact that little things like that, like they never made mention of the rock being blown off, but if you remember, like, they did blow it up, you just couldn't see it, and I like those things, because it's like, you may not have picked it up the first time, but second viewing, you're like, oh, yep, they did that, so I like things like that. And it's just smart. It's just very smart. So I get why they called it too cerebral for back then. I'd have to say it's an 8, and especially for a television pilot, I think it's probably one of the best for all of Star Trek's, and I can definitely see why they launched it for an entire franchise. So that's it.
Okay, and so for me, because the Doctor is not so much in part 2, I'm going to move my grade up to a 6. Just because I didn't have to hear the Doctor very much during the second part.
Oh, don't lie! And, you have a fan club of that guy. It.
Dartboard? No, that's a little harsh. But no. So overall, it was decent. I mean, I do understand how they kind of, to me, action-wise, they blew their wad in the first part and then kind of forgot about it for the rest of the thing. And then it became more of a thinking man's game, second part. And so I enjoyed both aspects. Some of the some of it was a little, yeah, okay, I guess. But some of it was really good. I really enjoyed Pike's acting in this one. I thought he made a good captain. I thought he delivered his lines well. I really was, out of all the characters on screen, even I dare say Nimoy, in this pilot, Pike was the one who sticks out for me.
Yep.
And so I would give it a 6. And so we've come to the end of this one, and I want to thank again my roundtable, Captain Trek, Vance. Thank you both for joining me once again.
Thank you for
And-
having us this week.
No,
And
thanks
I look, sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and if you like this, please like, share, subscribe. And as always, till next time, take her easy, folks.